Daniella onto the podcast. I've actually been really nervous to ask you, want to ask you a long time. And then Siobhan was like, would you fucking just ask her? And I was like, okay, right. Don't be professional, but I just DM'd you. I was like, can you come on? But as you would have heard in the intro as well, like I'm a big fan of Daniella. I've also met her in real life and I just think she's fucking gas. I just love her. And she also taught me a lot in her book, made me aware of a lot of behaviors, and she made it okay for the fact that if you used to be a dick, you can come back from it. Because it's
yes. Best intro ever. P.S. I love you too. Like the biggest fan of all time. Honestly, from the moment we met, and I know people say this to you all the time, you have a magnetic energy and it stands to you in every way and in all the things that you do and all the people that you touch all the time. And I wasn't immune to that at all. I absolutely loved you from the moment I met you. So I'm totally honored to be on the podcast. I see it's doing so well. I'm glad you like bit the bullet and did it. So I watch your stories all the time and you're like, I'm not sure. And I'm like, go for it. And now I know it's doing really well. So I'm glad you enjoyed the book too. And we can like give and take to each other, you know?
Yeah. So first of all, like we can talk about the book. I'm going to talk about, like, we can actually just go into like that bit right there where I was like, used to be a dick. You basically came out and was like, I was a fucking dick. And now here I am being aware of all my behaviors. And I think that's so important to be that transparent, because especially with Ireland, because if you used to be a dick, like I used to be a dick, it's a dick. And then people come up and they're like, look at Sinead, fucking meditation teacher, you know, doing all this fucking wellness shit, and her used to be down the back road smoking fags, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
So it's nice. It was nice to like listen to you talk about that, and that you used to be a party girl, and then like you just obviously became more super aware. But yeah, like I just want to talk about like how did you deal with the guilt? Because you dealt with a lot. There was a lot of stuff there. Like you treated somebody bad, and you had like you were a party girl, and then like how did you deal with like that guilt? And like how did you get it to go away?
Yeah, so I think what I wrote about in the book that was probably the more dickish behavior was when I was in my early 20s. I was in a long-term relationship, and you've talked about this a lot in terms of the avoidant kind of tendencies and how you can be very dismissive. And, you know, I was emotionally closed off. I was very quick to flee rather than like stay to communicate. I definitely like didn't practice gratitude. I didn't look for reasons to admire and be fond of my partner. There was times when the respect really lapsed, and a lot of that was my fault. See, it was interesting because as avoidant and as kind of pushing away as I was, I still stayed for 4 years, you know? So there was still a part of me that wanted that validation, wanted that love. Like I would betray myself in terms of two contradictory behaviors. I'm acting like the relationship means nothing to me and I don't even need it, yet I'm still here, you know? So that was kind of, that was something that took me a long time to see. And then as well, yeah, I think, you know, I was a model in the era of the photo call girl when Crystal was the place to be seen, and it was very enticing to go out with a big group of girls. You'd always get free bottles of vodka and like sparklers, and it was definitely tempting, and I think I fell into that temptation in a big way. And when you drink regularly, your decision making is not the best. And so I made lots of bad decisions off the back of just having a kind of a party lifestyle. One of those was, you know, sleeping with a friend's boyfriend, which I talk about in the book. And I know you've spoken about stuff like that as well. These are commonplace things that people go through in their 20s, commonplace mistakes that often result in lots of shame, lots of guilt, lots of maybe denial and repression, and just not wanting to face that kind of shadow part of yourself. Yeah, I think it results in a kind of a spectrum of who you are, right? There's like the script of the parts you want to see. So you're like, yeah, okay, I'm a model, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm nice, and I help other people, and then there's these other aspects of you that you just ignore. So you're like, no, actually, I didn't behave in a very good way in that relationship, and okay, that's not my self-image, but it's the reality of who I am. And then I behaved this way when I was drunk, and I made this decision when I was partially sober, and I reacted in this way when I got scared because I got caught. And all of those things are definitely a part of who you are, but they're not who you are in your head. They're not like that constructed self-image. So I think it takes a little while to get sick of your own bullshit. Like, I think that's what happened to me, is I got sick of my own bullshit. Like, I got sick of the contradiction between the stories of, I think if you can see, if you can observe who you are, and then there's contradictory behaviors going on, you have to be amazing to lie to yourself for a whole lifetime,
Oh, I know. Like, the same thing happened to me. Like, I was kind of like so unaware, and like, as you said, you slept with your friend's boyfriend. I also had sort of, it wasn't an affair, like he had a girlfriend, but it was like, for me, it was like she didn't exist. And I sort of look back at that behavior, and like at the time I felt no guilt, no nothing. I was just running around like thinking, oh, I'm just running around with this fucking person, and because he was a wee bit famous, but like and then I was like just doing whatever. And and I'm such an empath now. Like, I think about everybody's feelings, and I just get so, and I'm just like, what was I going through? So like, when I took it back and like really journaled, like, I really think it had to do with my self-love. And it was like, it made me feel so validated and good that he was choosing me over his girlfriend. Wasn't actually true, but that was just what he was feeding me with. So it was like feeding my fucking ego. It was like, here's all this validation. Like, I'm about to, you're worth risking my relationship for. So like, I was getting fed with all this dopamine. And like, when I sit back and like, now I was 18 at this time. So, and that went on for a few years. But like, when I sit back and think like, how and under God did I do that to another female? Like, I'll never know, because I obviously went through. So then there's my karma there. So then it happened to me after. And then like now, like obviously after that breakup that he cheated on me, like that was like my big awakening, like your awakening. So like, then I started to like feel all the feelings, and I had to go through all the guilt again, even though it was years prior, because I was like, oh my God, like, how did I do that to another person? But like, if anyone's listening to this, like, I know people make mistakes, and I know people, like, you slept with your friend's boyfriend, like, these things happen because we're just stupid, dumb, we're drunk, we're looking for validation, we don't know who we
and here
are.
you can't know what you don't know, right? Like, so I know in theory, when you're young, you're thought like, this is right, this is wrong. It's very different to be like cognitively thought something and then to actually limbically experience it, like with your emotions, right? So I think you can know one thing, but then you find yourself in the scenario, and like you said, there's loads of like nuanced things that happen. There's like ego comes into play, validation comes into play, whether or not you can actually set boundaries, whether or not you actually can practice theory of mind and how that might feel for the other person. And when you're in your early 20s and you're drinking, or you're hungover, or you're caught up in a whirlwind of experience that you don't really know how to navigate, who you think you are lapses away very, very quickly. And you have to actually learn through the experience of like pain or making mistakes, and then having that pain projected back on you, which is what kind of happened to you. You said you did it and then you experienced it, right? So you got to see it from both sides. I think it's not to take away from any of the mistakes, but it's to say that it's hard to know what's fully right all the time in your 20s. You have to navigate those mistakes and then be able to recognize them as a mistake, feel the bad feelings, and then make amends. But that's not something that we just immediately know how to do. I do genuinely think you have to navigate those times and do your best, but you're not always going to get it right, and we're obviously evidence of that. And I don't think that constantly avoiding it or constantly beating yourself up about it makes it better either. I do think you definitely go through that time of beating yourself up about it and feeling horrible amounts of guilt. Like, I mean, I ran away. I literally ran to Portugal. I booked a one-way ticket. I just wouldn't answer my phone. And, that in itself made it worse. So I it's learning all those things. It's learning what's right and wrong. It's learning then how to hold yourself accountable, be responsible, say sorry. And they're all like tough lessons.
Yeah, I know. But like, as you said, in your 20s, you don't have a fucking clue what you're at. You're just kind of roaming around, just doing whatever. And like at the time in the book, because I didn't know much about you, but Siobhan knew everything about you because you were the girl on the scene, you know, from her age group in Dublin as well. Do you know what I mean? So then I was like reading the book and I was look at all the stuff. Like she was a model, she was a radio presenter, and just like you just had like this crazy, you probably had the lifestyle that everybody thought they wanted, and you probably looked like that online as well. And then like you were just hit with this like massive burnout, and you had basically physical pain from your lifestyle like choices, which like I think it's such an important lesson for people to learn, that like your body actually knows what you're feeling. Like, because you in the book you said you went to the doctors and you went to the GP for all these pains, but when you changed your lifestyle, like your yoga, your meditation, that's when things actually started to fall into place.
I'm so fascinated by it now. I've obviously gone back to college to start to study psychotherapy, and like now I know it's like somatic compliance, right? It's like if your brain is under so much stress, even if you're unaware of it, right? Let's say you've just got you're expending so much energy to repress parts of yourself that you don't want to know. Maybe it's in relation to things that we were talking about there, or you're always turning on and off your stress response, or you're not dealing and processing negative emotions properly, like big negative emotions, because maybe you don't know how to, or you don't want to, because the thought of feeling those feelings is too big and overwhelming. Your body will discharge of those things. It has to find a way to discharge of those things, and one of the ways is somatic compliance. So you'll get a pathway through the body that allows for a discharge of that feeling. And I was getting so many of the typical pains and aches and complaints that people get when they're just maxed out in a psychical way, like in a psychological way. So, you know, you get the usual stomach complaints, you get the eye twitching, the insomnia, the heart problems like palpitations of the heart, the brain fog, the dissociation. And I was going in for like ECGs on my heart. I went for an MRI scan on my brain. I was going to the GP all the time for like intolerance testing and colonoscopies and like every test under the sun to try and find like the organic cause of this problem, but they couldn't find anything. It would always come back perfectly healthy in terms of a physical sense, but that's because the problem was psychical. You know, like it was a somatic kind of mind-body union thing. It was representing something unhealthy in my mind, not in my body. So yeah, it was interesting for me to learn, because I didn't realize that could happen. I remember being like, where's the pill? Yeah. I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, where's the solution? Where's the time? You know, I'm not sure how other people's experience of this might have gone, but in Ireland, it's a pretty big thing for your GP to say to you, well, actually, you probably need to take up yoga and meditation. Like, it's very strange for a GP to say that. I know. She's retired now. Say again?
Did you ever go on the medication at the time?
No, I didn't, because I was like, so I was never prescribed by this GP who ultimately said that to me. She's amazing. She's retired now, but she was obviously very progressive, right? So when I was going to her for all these tests, she was obviously reluctant to give me any medication. I think she knew in her intuition what was happening, but obviously she wanted to give me a certain amount of peace of mind with these actual tests. And then when push came to shove and we could test no more, she basically said to me, Daniella, like, this is a lifestyle problem. This is, she couldn't answer. And it's always such a complicated thing. It's rooted in your past. It's rooted in your present. It's how your past is triggering your present, how your defense mechanisms are failing you, how your coping skills are getting depleted. It's so many different things that are contributing to your burnout in the moment. But she essentially said to me, this is a lifestyle problem. Like, you need to go do yoga and meditation. Needless to say, I totally ignored her. I was like, she's mental. And this was about 3 months before, you know, the real max out of the burnout, which was really debilitating and just kind of stopped me in my tracks. But at this point, I had no idea that this was like a mental health issue, so to speak. I thought this was, I don't know what I thought it was. When I look back, I can't tap into that same mindset anymore, but I just thought that there was a one clean single solution, like, oh, it's a thyroid problem. Do you know, I just thought it was a simple thing that they were missing.
Yeah, but instead it was like, see, I went the opposite way. When I was going through my like depression, I wouldn't go to the doctor. I just wouldn't. I just was like a shame. Like I had so much shame. But I'm glad I didn't go to the doctor, because like I really searched. It was like, for me, there was like two voices. So one voice was like, you don't deserve to be here, like leave this earth. And the other one was like, get the fuck up and listen to a motivational video and get your shit together. So there's like these two voices. And I just kept thinking, like, I'm just sick. Like, I'm just got anxiety. That's just my life forever. And then whenever I was just like, right, the only things that was getting me through the day was reading in these YouTube videos that were like, are getting me up out of bed, and I wasn't really sleeping. And then like, I just had this epiphany one day. Like I was just crying all the time, never sleeping, just a mess. You know the feeling, but I think yours was probably a little bit worse because you actually couldn't get out of bed, whilst I was dragging myself out, kicking and screaming. But I just thought that I was sick, and I was like, I'm not going to the doctor. Like I just felt, I don't know why, I didn't think it was like there was no therapy or something. There was no way to access how I was feeling. I didn't know where to go. It was really, really hard, and I didn't want to go anywhere. So I just like went deep into books and was like, and just went into myself. I didn't really have much friends at the time. I was really alone, and it's like I got myself out of there by reading books. But like I'm so glad I didn't go to the doctor, because I just think like I would hate that easy way out. But like I know people do that, but and I'm glad that you didn't take the pills as well. Then you had to go through this. Like it seemed hard when I was listening to it in the book. Like, but you know what? Like how amazing, isn't it, when you're right down and you start to come up again?
It's very scary. And I remember thinking like this, similar to what you said there. I remember the prevailing thought being like, I'm never going to come back from this. Like, I remember thinking, this is who I am now. And there's no, the heaviness of going, oh my God, I have to wake up and feel like this every day. And I have to struggle like this every day. And, you know, when it gets really debilitating, all of life's simple pleasures are gone. Like food doesn't taste nice anymore. You're showering for everyone else's benefit, not because you care about yourself, but because someone's like, you look like shit or you smell like shit, you know. It becomes such a sad, joyless existence. And I remember being so scared that was just who I was now, and that there was no way back to what at that time seemed like a unicorn person, like such a full and happy and fun and joyful person. And I had gotten to the point where it was like a probably an anxiety disorder, rather than just day-to-day anxiety, which I think is a normal human emotion and shouldn't be vilified. You know, it's a part of the spectrum of emotions, but I like anything, when it gets too extreme, it's disordered, and any stimulation was too much, you know. So the thought of going outside, or I had a particular like fear around the sound and sensation of footsteps behind me. So trying to like go outside to achieve any task was so taxing. But I had spent a good few weeks in this kind of stupor, feeling this way, and I had decided to get a second opinion on this yoga and meditation situation, right? Okay. Because that was the last bit of like medical advice that I was left with. And then I just kind of spent about the next 3 months just slipping further into this abyss. And I was still trying to work at this time. And about a week prior to making this decision to go to get a second opinion, I'd had the mother of all panic attacks and had left work and had been in bed for about a week. And I had tried during that week to do a meditation, right? And to go to a yoga class. And I hated both. Like, I hated yoga so much. I just was like, what is this? Like, this is just, I hated it. I can't even explain. I hated the yoga teacher. I hated her telling me to breathe. I was like, I've been breathing my whole life. Like, what is this? And when I would sit down to try and meditate, it was just like a slideshow, like of all my failures. So like all the things that I like had to, like, I just was like, this is torture. So like I rang
distracting yourself from everything that you were.
Yeah.
scared of.
Well,
Yeah, that's why people can't meditate. Like it's as in like they're like, no, I just can't. And I'm like, no, you need.
but I don't think I'd learned to sit with myself like that. Like I
Yeah.
hadn't learned to, I found it so unbelievably distressing at first. But I went to get this second opinion. And I remember it was like a 15-minute walk from my apartment to the GP. And it like that walk was like my skin was crawling. And that was the moment where because he didn't know me, this GP, I had just called him out of desperation. I had no history with him. And I went in and told him all of my history, all of the things that I'd gone through with the last GP. And he gave me a prescription for antidepressants and Xanax. And that was the day when I was like, I am leaving. I'm dropping everything. I'm going traveling. This cannot be my story. I was like, I'm 27. I'm like, this can't be who I am now. I just take these pills and go to work and struggle every day. And I just quit my job, left my relationship, moved out of my house and booked a one-way ticket to where did I start? I started in California, and I didn't come home for 2.5 years, and it was the best 2.5 years. That's when we met.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's actually mad. I was in the middle of all that, which is so fun. And you know what? Like reading your story, I was like, oh my God, this is my story, except like, yeah, it's fucking my story. Like I was like, I went traveling because I was meant to go travel with my boyfriend, and then obviously he cheated, and I found out like 2 weeks prior to the flight, and I was like, you're not coming. I was in anger stage. I was like, you're not coming. I'm going by myself. And then like I went through the motions of, oh my God, what have I done? And then like he wouldn't text me back because he was like, I'm done. Like, and I was like, oh my God. So then I had to go through all that. But like me and you obviously came out a good way, because like, see, when you go solo traveling, like you literally have no distractions to distract your mind, and you have to sit with yourself, and like you have to really reflect on their behavior, our behavior, everything, and just kind of, but then you just you know when you get out of Ireland as well, you're like, holy fuck, where have I been for the
you can. I felt like, and it's funny because we must have both intuitively kind of known that there was a solution here, but it was very like counterintuitive, like going traveling on your own at a time when you're probably the most vulnerable ever. And I remember like my family and stuff were worried for sure. But do you know the way, like, I think you get this more than anyone, like a whole body yes, like when your intuition is screaming at you, even when it doesn't make sense. Like my whole body was like, you have to go. And I knew, like, I'd worked 10 years to get to the job that I had. Like it wasn't something I felt like I should walk away from easily. My family were saying to me, like, are you sure you're okay? Like you have just been prescribed this medication, you can't leave the house, but yet you want to get on a plane on your own. And I just was like, please trust me. Like I have to go, please trust me. And they did. And I didn't know how long I was going for, you know, in my mind, I thought maybe a year. I didn't really say that to them. I was like, look, I just have to go. I'm going to see how I get on. And they obviously could tell that I immediately was feeling better, because I think the first layer I shed was all of the superficial stress, right? Like just work stress, relationship stress, taxes, just general life, adulting stress, right? So I shed that first whole layer when I left. But then I hate this kind of cliche that like traveling will fix it all, right? Like it just doesn't. It took me around 8 months of repeating the same bullshit, like slipping back into the same distractions. And there was just tiny moments of forced reflection. And those would be like when I was on a really, really long bus, like 18 hours, and my Kindle died and my phone died, and I just had to sit there. It was like forced meditation. Yeah. And those were the tiny little moments where I would have like a little bit of insight would surface for me, a little bit. And I would ruminate on that insight a little bit, and I would see a part of myself that I hadn't seen before. And then I'd push that right back down and I'd go get pissed. Like it was the same nonsense for ages.
I went and like I was in denial. So I was like, drinking, how'd you go for your breakup? And I was like, tequila, like literally fucking tequila, but I wasn't over it. I was just like looking like I was over it, drinking. And then when it's exactly that, like you cannot run away from your problems. Like I got to Australia and it was like, he's not coming after me. I'm alone. I have no friends. What the fuck? And like I just had to, and then you know where my reflection came? When I was on the fucking farm, because I had no friends and the fucking phone signal was shit and there was nowhere to go out and there was nowhere to like distract. I was just picking potatoes. So I had to reflect, and I swear when I came back from that farm, I was like a transformed woman. Like and you're right though, it's because I had to fucking sit with my feelings, my emotions. I had to really understand his emotions and just realize it wasn't about him, it was fucking about me. But like when I was always wanting to go traveling. I always wanted to go traveling, but I never wanted to go by myself. And I just feel like the universe needed me to go by myself. And like I waited on my body to be better. I waited on my friends to come. I waited on countless fucking boyfriends that never ended up coming because I don't know why. I just like was waiting. And then obviously this happened and I was like, you're going to come with me and I'm going to be fine. And then obviously just the universe wanted me to fucking go by myself. But like, it was such an amazing thing. But I'm telling you now, I was frightened. Like I was really afraid of going at the start. Like every night I had the heart palpitations. I was like, I can't sleep. But then there was one day I was like hiking up a mountain and I was just like, oh my fucking God, why was I so afraid? Why was I so fearful for this for 4 years to go traveling by myself? It is literally nothing to be scared of. And it is the most beautiful thing. And you feel like such a strong, badass woman, don't you? You just feel like you can take anything. But 100%. Did you ever not feel?
I was never
scared? You were just like, get me fucking out of here.
I was never scared of the traveling, right? Like I think I had gotten to such a place in my head where I couldn't be scared of anything other than my own inner world. Basically, the world outside of me didn't scare me half as much. So I people ask me that all the time, like, were you scared as a solo female traveler? And I actually think that was buried so far below so much other fear that it didn't even register. Perhaps if I had been in a different headspace, I would have been. But what I was genuinely scared of was that that I had put all my eggs in one basket. I was like, I'm going to find myself here. I'm going to come back to myself by doing this. And I was so scared that I would just continue to travel feeling this kind of heaviness and not be able to really get back to who I was prior to having had this kind of period of challenge. And I think that's why I kept having to run essentially and numb, was that when I would sit quietly, it didn't, you know yourself, when you start to do the work, when you start to self-reflect, when you start to understand yourself, drop the self-image, take a real radically honest look at who you are and what you've brought to the world. It's not always that like nice. It's not always that comfortable. It's not always just like roses. And so every time I would be doing this bit of self-reflection, I would feel like, well, this doesn't feel very nice. So this isn't the answer. What if traveling isn't the answer? What if I'm always going to feel bad? What if I'm always going to feel sad? You know, this kind of way. But again, it came back down to intuition. It was like I knew intuitively, if I could just keep going, if I could just keep thinking a little bit more, keep writing, keep reading, keep reflecting, keep dropping away that idea of who I was that I built up over the last 10 years, you know, that like my worth was in my looks and I had to have a certain body, as you said, or I had to, you know, have a certain, my value was intrinsic to my career, and all of these like ideas that I had around myself and who I was. It was all an illusion. Like I could just drop it like chains, like drop weights off me. And that happened really, really slowly. And it was it took about a year to really do that work and to kind of get to a point where I felt more blank. And then I felt like that's when the work could be done. That's when the growth started to really happen. And ironically, it was during a yoga teacher training. This is like the most cliche stuff ever. But the reason that I went that
yoga teacher, everyone has to go through that. Like of course I am. I want to sit with my thoughts. I'm ready.
The reason I did it was again, it was another intuitive thing. It was a full body yes, but I'd been on the road for around 9 months and I hadn't spent longer than 6 nights in any one place, and I just wanted a rest. I wanted to do something that felt relaxing and calm, and I was just like, fuck it, why not get a certificate while you do this year of travel and, you know, be a yoga teacher. I never ever planned on actually teaching yoga. I just wanted that month of stillness and of movement and of so that was the real turning point, which is ironic because I hated yoga so much.
But you're like me. I don't really like, I try, like I'm gonna do what you do. I'm gonna be like I'm literally you, because I'm probably gonna go do that soon.
Yeah,
I,
do it.
yeah, but like it's something like, because obviously meditating is my thing. It's not like I meditate every day. So, and then yoga is like Siobhan's thing. So,
Yeah.
but I know that I love it, but I'm just like, I can't get into it as much. But like, I know in the book that you said that you were doing your yoga teacher training. And I remember you saying like, my dreaded savasana, because you really dreaded it at the start and you hated it. When did you change from dreading it to liking it?
It was definitely a slow process. So I remember like when I didn't understand what all the different yogas were, right? There's like Ashtanga, Vinyasa, Hatha, I was like, what is all this? Like, I just didn't, it felt like a club that I wasn't allowed into and I just didn't understand. So I would just randomly pick classes and generally I would be just irritated and exhausted at the end of it. So when I started to learn yoga, I think I understood that if you've got feelings in your body that you're not acknowledging, like, first of all, they're your feelings, they don't belong to anybody else, but yoga can surface them, right? So like, if I had so much anger in my body that I didn't know about, so I'm moving through these postures and you're moving in ways that are obviously a little bit unnatural, a little bit provocative, they're challenging, and so whatever is underlying your mental norm is going to surface. And if that's just a load of anger and a load of upset and a load of unacknowledged hurt, that's going to surface for you in yoga. So I didn't realize that at first. And I would be like, why does this practice make me so angry? Like, just so, like, nothing in the world made me this angry. And I would project it on, it was never mine, by the way. I could never own it. I would project it on everyone. I'd project it on the teacher. I'd project it on the person breathing loudly next to me. I'd project it on the person wearing the fucking beads. Like, you're from Nace, so why are you wearing those beads from India? Like, I was just so angry, right? Like, and I would transmute that anger into like judgment and projection and all of those things. But over time, I started to realize like the common denominator here is me, like everyone else isn't wrong all the time and I'm just perfect. And I would realize this in Shavasana. I would lie down at the end of the class and be like thinking, it would give you space to think things through, and it would always again come back to like, it's a self-reproach, right? Like anything that surfaces for you is yours. It's yours. It's your emotion. No one puts it on you. No one gives it to you. It's your emotion. And I would be like, oh my God, I'm so angry. And I'd have to face that.
Yeah.
And once I got through all the anger, it was tears. Like I would cry. I would always cry in Shavasana. And it's, so it was like moving down a scale of emotion because you're like processing the stuff that you could never face. And I think that's what yoga does, is whether you like it or not, or whether you can do it with language or in therapy or in a very kind of sophisticated cognitive way, yoga doesn't care. It's going to make you meet what's inside of you and you'll process it, whether you like it or not. I just didn't realize that's what was happening at the time. But once you work through that, it's dissolved and you get to come to like softer, more vulnerable layers of yourself, which I'd never let myself do. I was always very guarded. I would reside so much more in my masculine energy. Like I could not be in my feminine. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't be, I was like hyper vigilant, so like coming down into that place was really exciting in a weird way, like scary, but exciting. It was like, I didn't know I could feel these things. I didn't know I could think this way. I didn't know I could expand in this way,
Yeah. Like even in meditation, like I have to like have, when I'm doing my classes, I have to come on and be like, you might cry. And if you cry, I've done my job very well. So I'm always really happy when someone cries in my class, but people don't realize that, like, they're like, oh, is this normal? This is what your fucking body needed. Like people just think they have to be nice all the time. They have to not show their emotions, but like their emotions are sitting there. They're literally sitting there. And when you do a meditation, especially the ones that I do, because they're very good, then people
get it in there, the plug.
Tears just start rolling down their face, and you can see, like I'm watching them on Zoom, and they're like, and I'm like, you need to feel that, like you needed to get all that stuff up. Like people are just picking up their phone first of all and distracting absolutely everything. Like I said, people can't even, if like someone goes to sunbathe, they can't sunbathe anymore. Like they have to always be doing something because they want to distract their mind from like all the emotions and hard feelings that they haven't dealt with. And Like, I'm
And
just
there's
like,
a spectrum of emotions that are acceptable, right? Like if you were in a cafe and you were to see somebody laughing, you're not going to bat an eyelid at that. That's perfectly allowed. Those are the parts of ourselves that we allow. If you were to walk into a cafe and you were to see somebody crying, you'd be like, oof, that's a bit awkward. That's a bit uncomfortable. That's a bit like, don't do that here. Do that in your own space.
yeah,
So, you know, there's emotions that we just do not allow. And like anger is one of them. In Ireland, I don't know in your house, but like anger is not good. Like it's not allowed. You repress it down. There's like well-oiled reflexes to be like, especially when you're a girl, we don't get angry. That's not what we do. We don't have anger. Whereas like, of course, anger can veer into an unhealthy emotion, but anger is a very healthy human, like, and no matter how many self-help books tell you that you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be, sometimes even full of rage, that's not true. Like, it's a perfectly natural, healthy human emotion. It's about how you recognize that emotion and how you process, integrate, and express that emotion if necessary. It's not about going, oh, I cut that part of myself off completely. But that's what happens a lot. It's like there's a certain spectrum of emotions that are acceptable, certain ones that just are not, and we feel shame for feeling them. And that just leads to a whole host of like festering internal problems, because you not only haven't processed the strong emotion, you're feeling shame for feeling the emotion. You're also trying to like rid yourself of it. That takes a whole load of energy to like repress it away. Yeah, I'm glad you're making people cry in your meditations.
But see, right, with anger, like I'm just gonna ask you this question, right? So basically, right, I had to go to a healer because I had a pain in my stomach, pain in my back, but like you, and she was like, you're not expressing your anger. Like you need to punch your fucking pillow and you need to get it out. Like I was getting a lot, like it was around the time of COVID. And I think your man, I'm not even gonna name him because he fucking would love the attention. He put up being like COVID flouters about like me and Siobhan. Bearing in mind, like we were like the bars were open and all this, and we went to the bar thinking everything was grand, but then apparently it was like not grand, even though everything was open.
Yeah,
and
so confusing.
Pick me up, and this is a man, like, and I was getting attacked from all sorts. And you know what? Somebody messaged me, a nurse, and she sent me the most beautiful message, and she says it was basically like, yeah, you shouldn't be going out. Like it probably is disrespectful to us. And you know what? I was like, when she sent me that lovely message, I was like, maybe it was disrespectful to go out. Like maybe we're not allowed to go, even though we were allowed. And I was like, you know what? That's the way it should have been expressed to me, instead of this person attacking me and getting everyone else to attack me. And like when we weren't reacting, like he was trying to get us to react, and then he was trying to get people to tell us to. And I was just like, I was so angry. Do you know what? I was angry because there was a man and I was being attacked by trolls and people calling me this and that. And I was like, I wasn't even, because COVID is fucking new. Like there's so many things that we don't know. And sometimes we forget. Like one of the days we were in the gym and like I was like going like this really hard. And one of the trainers tried to help me. And then that blew up. And I was like, oh my God, we just totally forgot because we were in the moment that like, you can't touch me, you know? So
yeah,
it was just like, this is all new. And then I was just like, I was so angry that like this person attacked me, and I was in physical pain. Like I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't leave the house because I was like, okay, I can't leave the house because people are going to see and they're going to say I'm doing something wrong. And I was so attacked. And then I was in so much pain, and I had like my therapist was like, go to the fucking healer right now. And she called up the healer, and like and I'm not even joking, like the pain actually went away, which it sounds crazy, doesn't it? When you
no, I absolutely love this stuff. Like when you think about it, right? When kids are little and they get angry, how do kids express their anger? They like stomp and scream and punch. And that's how our nervous system knows how to deal with big emotions. And then we get civilized, we get told what's right and wrong, what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And so whenever we feel things that make us want to scream or cry or punch or stomp or shout, we don't do that. We suppress it down. But what we're not given is the appropriate way to discharge that. So we're told, okay, that behavior is not acceptable. That behavior is not appropriate. Don't do that. But we're not told, now don't do that, but do this instead. This is a healthy way to express your anger. We're just told to no. We're just given the shame. We're just told,
what's the healthy way?
Well, the healthy way in my experience, like, so dance exists all around the world in every culture, all throughout history for a reason. It's a healthy way of moving your body. It's a healthy way of shaking and moving. And I don't mean dance in terms of 1, 2, 3, step 1, 2, 3, pivot, turn. I mean wild movement, intuitive dance, moving your body in a wild way, in an animalistic way that feels good for you. Like, that's why people love going to, like, think about healthy ways to discharge anger in civilization. Football matches, fucking get the goal. That's a healthy way, right? Going to like raves and festivals and like dancing like a lunatic. That's another way. These are all ways that we unconsciously discharge our anger in socially acceptable ways. And then COVID happens and none of us can do any of those things. So like,
that's why I was so
one of the ways. Yeah, you can't, like, there's no way to discharge this feeling out of your body. And why, like, we should be teaching kids this. Okay, so this is not the way that we in society express our anger. So when you get angry, you don't stomp, you don't scream, but however, you recognize your own anger. So you label it, you say, I'm feeling angry. You self-soothe, so you breathe through your anger, so you're not reacting, but then you give your anger like appropriate expression, be it setting a boundary for yourself, expressing yourself to that person, you made me angry because you did this. Or if you have no way of doing either of those things, going and like dancing or jumping or running or something that physically, like, we are somatic mammals, we need to move to discharge stuff.
That's what my therapist says too, because I'm so compassionate and so like I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna react, blah, blah, blah. But then like my therapist like, go to the fucking MMA and kick the fucking shit out of someone because you need to, because I will not react, I will not confront, like it's not in my nature. And I always am compassionate. Like I'm just like, if somebody like stabs me, I always say this, somebody killed my dad, I'd probably forgive them because like I'm just that like rational or something, I don't know, I'm just that compassionate. I'm like, oh my god, I wonder what's wrong with him. So I needed to like express, she was like, you need to express your anger in another way, like punch the pillow, scream into the pillow. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I should feel sorry for the person, but then I'm like, no, you actually need to go and fucking bash it out. So that's good to know that, because
I have a fact for that. Oh, go on. Okay, sorry, go.
Go.
Okay, I feel like you'll like this one, right? So I was learning this the other day and I just feel like you'll be into it. So have you ever seen, like, you'll probably have seen this before when they talk about like say a lion chasing a gazelle in the wild, right? Yeah. And the animal that's the prey, obviously its stress response goes off and it goes into flight and fight, right? So it runs for its life, and then if it gets caught, it tries to fight for its life. And then once all of those responses are exhausted, it goes into a freeze response. So the animal looks totally dead. Like the animal goes like catatonic, totally stiff. And actually what's happened is it's completely dissociated. So the animal is no longer in its body. And it's actually like a survival response in terms of having a somewhat pleasant death if you're an animal getting chased by a lion. So you're no longer in your body once the catch has happened. But let's say the animal goes catatonic and then the lion gets a bit bored. It's like, I was only in it for the chase, I'm not actually going to eat this. It sniffs around it a bit and then it walks away, right? What you'll notice in the wild is the animal stays in the freeze response for like 30 seconds. And then it looks like the animal's having a seizure. Like its body goes into these big convulsions, right? And then it gets up, shakes itself and walks off. And animals don't store trauma in their body, because what's happening there is the animal is enacting somatically the end of its escape. It's acting out in its body the somatic experience of escaping the attack. And then it gets up, it shakes off all the stress and it walks away. But think about what happens to humans, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever gone through like something really traumatic, like let's just take it into like a layman's terms. So somebody's in a car accident and it's not a really, really serious car accident, but it's enough for an ambulance to be called. What's the first thing the ambulance does? They strap the person down onto like a whatever, and they protect their neck, and they will stop them shaking at all costs. They will sedate them, strap them down, keep them still. And this is for the person's benefit. Medically speaking, they don't want to like hurt their spine or hurt their neck. But what's happening is they're suppressing the person's nervous system from enacting the end of their trauma response, from shaking the trauma out of their body. So there's lots of studies that say like the trauma doesn't happen necessarily from the car crash. It happens from the care afterwards, from the inability to enact the end of the nervous system response. So if you then
unspoken word, I think, I don't know if you heard of it. It's
Peter Levine.
Yeah, I think it is. It's been ages, and the front cover is a tiger, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I actually read that ages ago, and that really shocked me as well. And that was the exact thing that he had said in that book. That's right.
It's so wild. But if you convert that then into the expression of emotion, it's doing something similar. It's just sitting in your body, creating like a trigger memory. So anytime something similar happens, you'll go, oh, that's when I was angry. The anger resurfaces double, and you still don't know how to properly express it.
Yeah, like it's hard. Like, and even with anger, because I did a podcast on like anger, and people were really shocked, because I'm just like, do you even know what anger is? And people are like, no, like, what even is it? Like, it's just like an expectation usually has not been met, and like it's got to do with whether your expectations, or like sometimes you need to look at your expectations, be like, okay, is that too high? Or do you need to then voice it to the person, be like, look, I expected this, so that they know your expectations, and then they won't be angry. So there's like two different ways. So like if a child is being angry and like stomping, he doesn't even know why he's angry. You can just be like, you can turn to your child and say, you expected me to buy you sweets. Like, mommy shouldn't have to buy you sweets. Like, you know, like they don't know why they're angry. And that's like the problem as well. There's no awareness. They're just angry.
Yeah, and it's trying to give words and validation to that feeling. So like even saying you're feeling angry, that's helpful, because what's actually happening when children are having tantrums, even though it's hard to see this in the moment when you're the parent and you have a million other things going on, and I'm not a parent, this is just what I've learned in books, but what's happening for the child is the emotion is so big, they can't keep it in their body anymore. They're not trying to ruin your day. They're not trying to be embarrassing. They actually feel so overwhelmed by this unnamed, unknown emotion. So you saying you're feeling angry is helpful to a child. They go, oh, okay, and then you say, where are you feeling that? Oh, you feel it in your belly, or you feel it in your chest. Okay, well, can you take a deep breath? And then can you imagine the anger going when you breathe out? Or, you know, even saying to them, did you feel angry because I didn't buy you those sweets? And you're making neural connections in their mind that makes that emotion less big and scary and overwhelming. The next time they can say, like, I feel that same anger the next time they feel it, you know. And the more you give words to their feelings, the more they're going to be well-adjusted adults who can handle emotion. But I feel like that didn't happen a lot when you know.
Screwed over our generation. We all did. We all had a fucking clue.
I wanted to ask you something. How do you deal with, like, you know, the way you're talking about people kind of attacking you online? Like, how do you deal with the sense that you get so much fulfillment and are able to spread so much online, but also have to face all of that like unsolicited feedback and kind of people projecting their judgment onto you?
Oh God, it's actually crazy. Like, when I think about it as a whole, I'm just like, wow. Like, the things that people have said to me, you wouldn't believe. It's unbelievable. But like, when you're into spiritual stuff and you read, you like, I know everything good happens to me because I give out good, and I try my best to give out good. And if I don't give out good, then I reflect on it and I can change my behaviors. Whilst when I look at the people that are randomly attacking a random 20, oh my God, what age am I? 28 year old, like, who's just living her best life, who's trying her best to do good, then I think if that's what they're doing, they're creating their own karmic energy. So I don't need to do anything about it. So I just feel like, but then you see they're unaware of the karmic energy. So then it's just like a full circle for them. So they're going to be like on those platforms or whatever, giving shit. But then their car breaks down. They don't get the promotion. And then they'll be like, why is all this stuff happening to me? Fucking, and they blame everyone. But they don't sit back and look at the fact that they tear down random strangers, they tear down their friends, they tear down they just don't. So like I watch my energy at all times. Like if I'm tearing down someone, like sometimes like say like you have we gossip and you're like, oh, I need to be like, oh, is that me tearing into their energy? No, take it back, because like, you know, I want my good energy, I want my good karmic energy.
Yeah.
So like for me it's very easy. And plus like when you study human nature, it's so simple to see all these people and like what's wrong. But then you're like, okay, should I listen to their, what do you call it, like their unsolicited advice? I'm like, no, the only person I ask for advice for is my friends and the people that like, so I'll say to Siobhan, you know, can you take a look at that podcast and tell me where I went wrong or blah blah blah. So instead of listening to like random strangers tell me that I'm chatting shy. So it's like,
But you know what judgment is, right? Like judgment is the person is seeing what they wish they could do in you, but they can't give themselves permission to do it. So when you're out in the pub having a laugh and somebody judges you on that, that's because that person wants so much to do that, but they either can't give themselves permission to do it, or it undermines their self-image. And so you doing it triggers them. If it meant nothing to them, they would feel nothing when they see you doing it.
What's a quote? I have the quote on my Instagram as well. It's they vent their desires in resentment. I don't know, I can't even remember, but it is that, like, it is true. Like, and then sometimes when I'm jealous of something, like me and Siobhan always talk about, like, if we're jealous, we'll sit back and be like, why are we jealous? Yeah, because you can literally see that it is something that you want.
Yeah, it's so like there's always motivation behind behavior and feelings, and it's so fascinating. Like once you start to see your true motivations behind why you're doing or feeling a certain thing, it's so unflattering so much of the time. Like it's so unflattering, you know, and sometimes it's very complicated. Like if you look at a girl and you feel jealous and you can feel that feeling in your body, first of all, that's a massive win, because you're massively self-aware to even be able to go, I feel this bad feeling is mine, I own this, and I'm feeling this towards this person, this has nothing to do with this person, so I'm going to reflect on my own bad feeling. That's the first giant win. But then when you get below that, it can be a whole array of unflattering things. You know, for the most obvious one is it's a lack of self-love, or it's your own just internal comparison going off and making you feel bad, and then because you feel bad, you're making that her problem. But there can be way more complicated things below that, like, you know, it's a whole host of interesting self-reflections. But the first thing is the self-awareness, is the ability to know that everything that comes up for you is yours. It's your lens of viewing the world. Like two people could look at the same scene and one of them is totally triggered to the point of wanting to abuse you on Instagram, and someone else feels like, fair play to her, she's living her best life. And that's because of that person's inner world. That's an accumulation of their past experiences, their past hurts, their past self-judgment, their inability to honestly self-reflect. And then they can't hold that bad feeling, so they just give it to you. They're like, you take that.
There was like a whole thing this week actually on Instagram, wasn't there, with two not bloggers, and they're both entrepreneurs at this stage. But did you see that? No?
I am absolutely in my own bubble. I just don't see anything.
Yeah, you're on, like, I was the same, but my agent is the same agent as the other guy. But anyway, so basically it's got, you know what, you can probably name it. It was about like Suzanne Jackson, and like, it wasn't even that she honestly didn't even make a mistake, I don't think, in my opinion. I think like it was a business decision. And then I was actually on Twitter, and I don't go on Twitter, but like I was just seeing, and then like it was just people tearing her to pieces because it's just been like, and I'm just like, what is wrong with people? Why are you using your energy to tear down this random person that like
I absolutely and like I love Suzanne Jackson.
And you could use her as inspiration. I said, like, you could sit there and be like, oh, she did this, she did that. But like, she was in the dole queue, and then the next thing she was a millionaire, and we could take inspiration and be like, it's actually possible. If we put our minds to it, put the work in, we can actually get anything we desire. But instead someone's like, oh, look at her in her big fucking that fancy nice house. I'm like, she was in the dole queue. You can do it. If she can do it, you can do it. And there's the inspiration. That's where it should be taken from. So like, if you're going to sit there and be like, oh, look at her, we're thinking she's this. No, like, it's complete jealousy, and the jealousy comes from the fact that you haven't done that.
You remind me of each other in that I feel like Suzanne Jackson, she pioneered this influencer industry in Ireland. And I feel like you're doing it, but in a more spiritual way. And I also feel like she navigated this with no guidebook, right? Like she did this on her own, navigated it on her own. She takes a lot of shit from a lot of people, and she is one of the most consistently kind and genuinely thoughtful people, and very, very generous, and never seems to waver on that in spite of how much shit that she takes. And I think that's testament to her, and probably why she's so successful. And in the same way, you know, you're talking about like karmic energy or being aware of when you're going into like a low vibe place and then bringing yourself up. I think that's probably what she does intuitively. She's just like, I'm not engaging, and she just stays in her good vibes, you know, for the majority of the time. No one's perfect, but like it's probably testament to her.
Yeah. Do you know another thing as well in your book that really helped me? So, you know, like the whole influencer thing, like at the end of the day, I've never really been a fashionable person. I've always so there's me as a fashion blogger when I first started, like, I am so shit at this. Literally all I want to wear sweats. And then you said in your book, you're like it was like something, it was like a self-acceptance moment. You were like, all I want to wear is like a flowy white dress and like no makeup. And like at that moment when I read that bit, I was like, I accepted myself as like, you don't need to try and be this thing that you're not. Like, you want to wear a flowy white dress with no makeup. Like that's what you want. Like you don't want like the whole fashion. You know what I mean? Like it really helped me accept myself, because I was like, I don't just because there wear makeup doesn't mean I'm like that was something that really helped me. And then
expected of us.
Yeah. And then the influencing stuff as well, because like obviously I've moved away from everything. I turned down all the money this year. I turned down all the brand ambassadorships. I just felt like it's something that it wasn't aligning me. Like I wear all the stuff, do all the stuff all the time, but like to sit down with my time and be like, okay guys, like here's me doing this and that, it just wasn't aligning with me at that point, because in November it's Black Friday. So I am a brand ambassador to like 6 or 7 people, and it's like this, and there's me like having all these revelations by reading books, but not having the space on my Instagram story for what my revelations were, even though I get no money from my revelations and I get money from my fucking like promo. But I was just like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to work on something that I want. So I've been working on the podcast, obviously, and then working on like my own meditation programs. And like, I also noticed in, when we were in the whole COVID situation and everyone was like, oh, nobody's going to buy anything. So then like all the brand ambassadorships got dropped. Well, most of them didn't, but like it was that point where I was going, I cannot depend on another person to like pay my bills. Like I need to pay my bills by myself. So that was like a big realization for me as well. And like the influencing world, even though it was such a good opportunity at the time. So like I wouldn't steer anyone away from it, because it obviously brought me to where I am and made me believe that I could have all this stuff. So yeah, but I just reading that bit, I don't know, it was such a small bit, but yet it had such a large impact on me to like accept me as like fluffy hair and no makeup.
No, I think it's so good. It's so good. Like I do think that it's expected of us, right? Like, well, in my experience, I was a model since I was 17, and then when I wrote that, I was probably 30, right? So that was like, that's a lot of reinforcement over a lot of years to tell you where your value is. And that was only reinforced more when social media blew up. So, you know, my career had always been around like fashion and following the trends of spring, summer, autumn, winter, just from a career perspective, not personally. Like, you know, you would know, okay, I'm doing autumn, winter shoots now, I'm doing spring, summer shoots now. So whether you wanted to or not, you had an awareness of the fashion at that time, or what beauty looks were popular that season, and what way you should wear your hair. And so it was just this constant presence in my life. And then social media kind of blew up, and it was an even more curated sense of self, and everyone was beautiful. And that's only gotten more so with filters and yeah, you know, it's just its own monster. And I look at it and I'm like, how the fuck do people have money for all these clothes? Like, they never wear the same thing twice. So where does the clothes go? Like, how does anyone have that much clothes? Also, how does anyone get up every day and do their hair and makeup like that? Like, I have so much admiration for it, but I have no time. How do you get all those hours back? When I went traveling, I was like, because there was no obligation to do any of that stuff. You just have a backpack, you have some simple toiletries, some simple clothes, flip-flops, your hair is never blow dried, your makeup's never done. I didn't even really bring anything like that. And obviously that's expected when you're backpacking. But I remember feeling like this sense of I had so much time and space and freedom. Like I wasn't constrained to feeling like, oh, I can't go out of the house now because I look like shit, you know, or, oh, I didn't brush my hair, do my makeup, so I better do that before I go for dinner with the girls, or I can't go out dressed like, you know, these kind of like expectations that are placed upon us by ourselves and our society and whatever else. And I got to kind of shed those. And I even said it in the book. I was like, this is such a non-light bulb moment for some people, but it was a real light bulb moment for me when I realized that I didn't have to have those obligations. I'm not obliged to look a certain way for anybody. I don't have to do my makeup. I don't have to spend money on trends. I don't have to feel guilty for not looking like I just walked off a catwalk every single day. Like real life isn't like that. And as soon as I gave myself that permission, it was so liberating. I was just like, oh my God, okay, grand. I like simple things. I don't really wear much makeup. I don't want to bother with fake tan. I don't want to have to get every decoration done all the time. And yeah, it's such a simple kind of almost shallow thing, but it was really liberating. And it gave me back so much time and so much of my own identity.
And that's why I love ballet, because it's like, there's no pressure. You just wear whatever. And there was just, I just love that as well. And then when I'm home, not really when I'm home, but like, not in Ireland, I would say. I would probably even in Australia, I'd have to like dress up and stuff like that. And like, I don't enjoy it. And I'm just doing it. But then when I'm in Bali, I'm just like, I can just wear whatever and just put my hair in a bun. Like, so.
I miss the tropics.
Oh, you can come back soon. Can
I come visit?
Oh my God, 100%. I need you to come back. Like, I need your good buzz.
I also feel like I'm proud of you for making a call on the influencing thing. When I moved home, I dipped a toe back into it a little bit because a pandemic happened and I was like, shit, how do I make money? That was never the
like, you have to say.
That was never the intention, you know, but I had gone back to college. My college fees are really, really extortionate. And I'd started a small company called The Still, but then everything changed when the pandemic happened, and it had been in-person events. And then I wasn't sure if it would translate to online. Thankfully it has, but yeah, I started doing a little bit of influencing work, kind of like to subsidize myself and to like make sure that I could live. But it was similar to you. I just felt like this full body no. My whole body was just like, no. And I was like, you have to listen to that, even though I'm sure it's probably very like aspirational seeming career, or you know, it's something that's very trendy at the moment. There's a lot of money to be earned in it. I think it takes a really boundaried and insightful person to go, I'm going to turn all of that down and just listen to my intuition and do what I want to do. I think you're going to be massively rewarded for that.
I already have been massively rewarded for it, and I've already like really went through that motion. But at the time, saying no to that much money, when you consider you're getting a year contract of this much money every single month for this, it was so hard to say no. And
you know, when you say no and then you see the person who got your contract. So, you know, when you say no and then you see the person online who got your contract, like I've seen that recently. And I'm like, so like say I'll say no to something and then I'll see who they gave it to. And I'm like, for fuck's sake. Yeah. And I have to like go through the no again.
But you know what? Like, it's like, I've been rewarded for it. I've actually been rewarded for it because something else went really well for me. And like, but to be honest, for me, like, I'm so unmoney driven when it comes to business. Yeah. So I now have this whole new perspective because I give a lot and I give a certain amount to charity. So like the more I get in business, the more I can give. So it's just been like, that's kind of like the way I've been going with it. And like, you want to see me, I'm like, Jack is like, you need to chill. Siobhan's like, you need to, like, I'm the biggest tipper you've ever seen. Like, I'm obsessed with people, especially in ballet. Yeah. I'm just like, oh my God, take all my money. Like, and this is why I work and this is why I do it. So, and then I was never like, at the time I was like, I don't need this money. And like, I had nothing to spend on either because we were in the fucking pandemic. But now I'm like, okay, I also want to prove to girls that you can be absolutely skint and then Yeah, and then the next thing you could be flying first class, you know what I mean? So
no, I think it's really inspirational. Like it really is. It's nice. You're leading the way for me, even in this way of kind of being brave enough to say no to traditional avenues and really leaning into that, I suppose, somewhat spiritual concept of intuition and trusting yourself and giving to receive and living in an abundance mindset and not kind of being in scarcity. And I think you really embody that, and you live it quite loudly. Like you shout about it, you don't live it quietly. And that's very inspiring.
oh, thank you. A
You're
good book for
welcome.
this moment is The Seat of the Soul. It is literally like everything you need to know about karmic energy
Okay.
and just about actually finding your soul. These other things like find your external, but like you need to find your internal. Like we're so driven by money, houses, relationships, but like we're not like we need that, you know, when your body says no and your body says yes, like we need to listen to the intuition and then you'll be rewarded for it. So
Yeah.
and it's the same thing people go for working as well. People don't want to quit their jobs for security, but yet their body's telling them no. They're probably in physical pain, but their body's saying that like they need to just get rid of the security. I did that plenty of times, got rid of the security and just have to just go.
I will say I've never regretted walking away from that job. You know, it's led me on a whole adventure that I never expected. And I know for sure I'll never regret it. Like, I know on my last breath, I'll look back and go, fuck, that was so much fun. You know, like all of the unexpected and stepping into the unknown and being a little bit more unconventional and maybe it requiring a little bit more bravery, even though it was probably desperation rather than bravery on my part. But it's definitely, I don't regret it one bit. Like I couldn't even imagine still being there, you know, getting that paycheck and, you know, you have abundance in that sense, but it's so restricted. It's so restricted. Like nobody could buy my time now. No way. It's absolutely priceless to me. No one could buy my freedom again in that sense. Like, and I would be willing to take the financial hit for that freedom. I think it's,
I was really,
it's a crisis.
I was like, see, I was like, but you know what? Like, I've been so skint in my life and I'm like, I'm grand. And then like, I could feel my body saying no to some things. And I just wanted a voice for like teaching people and whatever. So it was just so freeing for me. And I was like, fuck it, like money's mine, like whatever. Like as long as I can have a roof over my head and grand. But it worked out for me, and I'm getting into. I actually opened 2 new businesses this month, so I'm an entrepreneur.
Go on.
No, fucking. But you're the same. You've got the.
You're amazing.
And you've got another book coming out as well. Can we?
Yes.
Is there anything we can know about that?
Do you want a little preview?
Yes.
I know. I am absolutely loving writing books, by the way. I feel like I could very well disappear to some small island and write books for the rest of my life. I absolutely love it. I do feel like you'll write a book one day. I know you've said 33 is the number, right? Like you're waiting till you're 33. 33 is a really special number. I think you should write one when you're 33.
And I think I'm going to be in New York. I don't know.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know. That's my psychic.
Oh my God, I can't picture you in New York. Why? Why New York?
Oh, I don't know. I've had this drive to go to New York since like, I don't know. And then I read the book with The Power of Now, and then your man was he had this drive to go to California, and that's where he wrote The Power of Now. So I was like, maybe I am going to go there. I think I'm going to go and pretend I'm Carrie Bradshaw for like 3 months and be like, I'm a struggling writer. Like that's the kind of vibe I'm going for. So I was like, I'll go there and write my book when I'm 33. I don't know where it's come from. I right away, like pairs, like I basically wrote a book in my emails anyway. So it's like, I'll probably just put that into a book one day, but
you'll fire it out.
Yeah, but like, well, tell go back to you. Like, we need to know.
Okay. So yeah, I never saw this coming. Again, this is another surprise from just stepping into the unknown. But so I wrote Jump in 2019 and it was released in 2020 and it did really well, which was amazing because it's so hard when you're close to something to know how it will be received. I think your mind is naturally kind of leaning towards the negative. You know, I had to like prepare myself. I was like, look, if no one reads this or if everyone reads it and they think it's shit, I wrote this for me and I know why I did it, and I had to like stand in my conviction and really like examine my agenda behind writing the book and make sure that it wasn't for approval, because it's very likely you're not going to get that, right?
It was a fucking bestseller.
Yeah, it did so well. It was really, really unexpected. And honestly, such a source of pride. Like, and I say that now in a way that's unashamed. I think I wouldn't have been able to say that before, but I'm genuinely proud of it. And I always wanted to write, so it started, the word is kind of misleading, but it started as like a journal, right? But I think a journal summons the idea of like blank pages, like stationery, right? Where you're just writing a stream of consciousness. But I wanted to write what I felt was like what I needed at that time. Like I needed structured knowledge, like book-based knowledge that would spark in me a thought that I could then apply to myself, right? So I needed basically psychotherapy, but that I could apply to myself. And I could not find this anywhere. I couldn't find this type of resource anywhere. So my publishing company came back to me and they said, Jump did really well. Would you be interested in writing a follow-up? And so we kind of collaborated on this idea of what kind of grew from a journal into a workbook. So let's say Jump was 70,000 words. This book is called Jumpstart and it's like 45,000 words. So it's still a book. There's still a lot of reading in it. But say that extra word count that's missing is space for you to apply the knowledge in the book to yourself. So you can, what it is a tool for self-awareness. It's all of the layers. It follows the journey exactly of Jump, and it's all of the layers of work that I spent years struggling to learn, broken down into the most coherent, research-based, applicable workbook that I could put together. And I'm super proud of it. And I think it's going to be helpful, not necessarily easy, as we've already discussed, like this work, but I have a lot of points in it where I remind you of that resistance and the fact that you might feel a certain level of resistance around this work. But I think for the most part, it's a thorough way to gain a lot of self-understanding and self-awareness. And then I really wanted as well, something that was really important to me, was not just leaving people in the lurch with that self-awareness, then giving them the tools to apply that in a healthy way, in a beneficial way. So it's not just like, oh, okay, I found out this thing about myself. Oh shit, what do I do with that now? It's just kind of uncomfortable. So yeah, there's lots of tools in there to be the best version of yourself, which sounds so cheesy.
Like, you know me in journals, like I am so buzzed for that.
I think you'll really like it. I'll obviously send you a copy. You were so like, you were so good with even sharing Jump, and you were so like authentic in your sharing of it, which was so lovely. And I really appreciated it.
So anyone that's listening to this, then Jump will be in the description, so you can buy that.
Oh, thank you.
When's your new book coming out?
So yeah, it's Jumpstart, which is obviously a nice like linked name, and the covers look like they go together. They're like a cute little duo. It's out on May 21st.
That's so soon.
Yeah, very soon. Yeah, it's really exciting.
The last question I want to ask you is, you're in a new relationship now.
Yes.
And I was asking, what is different now with your new man compared to...
good question.
Like what?
Very good question.
Changed?
That's a nice question, actually. So what is different? I would say from day one, it's been very healthy. And that's partially, I'm going to take a bit of credit for that out of my own self-awareness. But I think as well, once you've been through, and I think you have to go through these as well. I think once you've been through a relationship in which you've maybe not behaved your best, and then you've reflected on that and you've gained a bit of growth out of that, and then maybe you've been in a relationship that's been very codependent and unhealthy, in a sense of like, there's no autonomy in that. There's just, you complete me, and if you're not here, I'll die. And then you learn from that. And then maybe you've been in a relationship where you've betrayed yourself and you've let yourself be treated less than you deserve, and you've done that in cycles, hoping and wishing that it will change, or putting up with less than you want and deserve. And I think it's going through all of these cycles of relationships that you gain little bits of knowledge. So what's different in this is that I don't think I would have even entertained something now that didn't feel like a full body yes, and that didn't satisfy what I view as something healthy, something respectful, something fun and easy and playful and happy and all of those things. So it's still very new,
but when you know, like it's true. Like,
we'll say a full body yes. We'll say a full body.
We'll say a full
He's
body
definitely listening right now.
And you're like, we're a bit of avoidant before as well. So like,
yeah, I was definitely very avoidant. Have you always been avoidant, or did you ever like sway between the two?
I don't know, because I was like, okay, I thought that like Johnny had made me an avoidant because, you know, he hurt me so bad. So I was like completely closed off. Like every single boy, I was like, casual. No, you don't fit into
my diaries.
I was like 18 men. I was just like, no. And like, it took me a long time to get with someone. And then when I did, I was like, no. So I thought that he made me an avoidant. But when I look back, I think I've always sort of been an avoidant because I never got hurt. So then he did hurt me, but I was still an avoidant. But like, I think, I've always been an avoidant. But now I'm secure. I'm fucking secure. Like I've worked on myself so hard. Like I am, like, I mean, I was so frightened of my relationship with Jack. I was always like, you know, he's so young, like just trying to keep him at arm's length. But then when I realized I was an avoidant, I was just like, I'm going to be alone forever. And this is going to keep being a cycle if I don't let somebody in. So I just had to like, every time an emotional wound came up, every time I freaked out, I just stepped forward. And he just, obviously he's like the best person ever. So he's so secure. And it's honestly like he's healed me as well as like.
That is so nice. And I fully believe that, you know, I fully believe that we find our hurt and our healing in relationship. And I just feel like I'm so invested in you and Jack, as you know.
You love me, Jack.
I feel like Maddie sent him to you in a big way, and you know that I'm obsessed with that. And I'm like very much rooting for you too. But I also wanted to say, right, you know, the way we talk about avoidant and secure. So I think we were both very avoidant, but I do think that you can be different. You can have a predominant attachment style, but you can still showcase different attachment tendencies in different relationships. Because I've definitely been predominantly avoidant, but still displayed some strangely anxious tendencies, which is so interesting. But now I feel like I'm so proud of you that you feel like you've gotten to secure. Like I think I'm getting there. It's the healthiest I've ever been by far. And this relationship really showcases that to me. It's a very secure attachment style relationship. And I don't think I've ever had that before in a way that's been on both parts. And it's so healthy. It's so safe. I think there's a lot of prosperity for each individual in a relationship like that. Like you can come as you are and grow from there and be accepted as you are and expand from there. And it's so nice. But I'd still say, like, I have to call myself, you know, I have to sometimes sit and go, where's that feeling coming from? What is that? And try and communicate healthily. So you've inspired me in that way too.
Yeah, because like there's so many anxious tendencies, like, oh, should I look at his phone right now? Like, oh, what's that message? Like, and I would be like, that is like my anxious. Then it's like it's trauma as well from my old relationships coming up, and I have to sit back and be like, Jack has never done anything to distrust me, like, and he deserves his privacy. I am not going to pick up his phone. And you know, and I always think, like, same with the whole picking up the phone and stuff like that, like sometimes you need to realize that, like, boys and girls talk tongue in cheek, like, will be cheeky bastards, will be like, oh, look at your mom looking hot, and like, it doesn't mean I don't love Jack, it just means me and the girls are having chats. So
no, I think if you go looking for stuff like that, you're going to view anything you find that's even in any way not innocuous, you're going to find something bad in it, because you're looking for something bad. You're going to find something bad, you know? Yeah.
So, but I won't keep you too long, because I've left you so long here. Like, I knew ours was going to be
long. I love it
so much. And I asked you more and more and more because I can't cope with my fave, and I want to see you soon. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you for having me.